So it was HRC declared a national emergency, right? Which makes
They're such a
absolutely no
joke.
sense.
The Human Rights
The
Campaign.
problem is, oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh, so they've been around since the early 1980s, and they're this LGBT rights org, but it's basically a Democratic Party front group at this point. They just a few weeks ago, declared a national emergency, saying it's like 5-alarm fire, the worst it's ever been for LGBT rights. That is demented. They're actually saying that 2023, the year of our Lord 2023, is worse than 1985. You had the AIDS epidemic. Gay marriage was a pipe dream. I think anti-sodomy laws were still on the books in some places. It's just the hyperbole. I know gay people are dramatic, but these activists, they just are next level dramatic. It is demented. And also it's like the boy who cried wolf. It's like the 10% of the time they actually have a valid complaint, nobody freaking listens to them because they're so hysterical and partisan the rest of the time.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue with the HRC that we're seeing now, and them, doing these very partisan stuff, is they are the ones that are determining businesses' CEI scores.
Yes.
So when like Bud Light came out and they lost their 100% CEI score because they backtracked at all on the whole Dylan Mulvaney scandal. So they lost their score. So now they had the boycott to deal with, and then they had their CEI score to deal with, which feeds into their ESG score to deal with.
I mean, the Bud Light thing is really, it's just chef's kiss, how to completely alienate the right, and then without fixing that, also alienate the left.
Well, they never apologized. Yeah.
No. And they just put those pandering ads to try to recover it, and it just made it worse.
Well, and now they did it again. Well, and I showed on the show last week that Yingling showed exactly how you do it. When Yingling came under fire because they have naming rights to a music festival, and that music festival was going to host an all ages drag show, and they used Yingling to promote it. Yingling said, no, we have naming rights over that, and we are happy to work with them to change it to an 18 and over drag show. And they apologize for anything there. They don't support, promoting beer to those under the age of 21, but, having drag shows that are sexually explicit for, under 18.
That's what I don't get about the whole drag queen story hour thing. I think people on the right often get a little more worked up than they think it's more widespread than it is. It's still like it goes viral, but it's still a pretty rare thing. Like I don't know anybody anywhere around here having a drag queen story hour. But I will just say, like, why are liberals so opposed to the idea of just making drag 18 plus? Like, it seems pretty common sense. What is the big loss of not being able to bring your child to a drag event? Like, that is, in my opinion, not appropriate for children. I have a little bit of two minds on some of the laws. What I would say is this: I would support a law saying you can't bring a minor to a sexually lewd performance of any kind, drag or not. Some of these laws go a little too far down the path of targeting drag, but not other similarly situated activities, which I think is a free speech issue at that point. But it's not a free speech issue to simply say anything that is a lewd performance is 18 and up. That seems like a pretty common sense law, and I just don't see what the loss is. What are they missing out on, right? Like,
well, here's an issue because actually just this week, I actually think on Friday, in Florida, the Florida bill was blocked on Friday that banned drag shows for minors because it simply stated it wasn't clear enough, and so they said it was a First Amendment issue because they didn't define what a lewd, performance was.
You have to be careful. These laws can't be vague because laws that are too vague are unconstitutional. I don't know the specifics of that law in Florida, so I can't really say. But there's an issue for example, an issue with the parental rights, or what critics called the don't say gay, that I thought was a legitimate critique in Florida was just that the bill was pretty vague. And I think you
Mhm.
have to make these things very specific so that people are
Yeah.
on notice about what is and isn't allowed. And it's okay to have reasonable restrictions and safeguards, but you do have to let people know exactly what's allowed and what's not. To
Yep.
pass like vague language and then leave it up to interpretation or enforcement is not really fair to people, and then also leaves it ripe for abuse. If the language is
Yeah.
vague, they can enforce it sometimes and not other times, but based on who's well connected and who's not. So, but I will say, it would be great if we had activist organizations with credibility that could actually, like a human rights campaign before it went super partisan, 15 years ago, it
Yeah.
worked with Democrats and Republicans alike, that could be a referee on these things and give honest, this one bill makes sense, this one needs some changes. But because they've made themselves so partisan and hysterical, nobody in the Republican Party listens to a damn word they have to
Yeah.
say, and I can't blame them.
That's the same with the ACLU, and I do agree. There's some. I think because I actually on my very first episode I read the Tennessee bill that banned drag, and it seemed like a fairly good bill, because it basically just made drag shows the same as taking a kid to a strip club, and that's kind of, they just added to that section of the original bill. One of my biggest concerns about like a lot of the bills that target trans youth, is that they specifically, because I've worked on a few of them now, is that as I talk to politicians, I tell them I'm concerned that this bill will be overturned based off of 14th Amendment equal protection laws, because you allow a young female to still get breast implants, but you don't allow males to get breast implants, for example. And so it's specifically targeted to gender dysphoria. And so that could be construed as sex-based discrimination. And that is my biggest concern with a lot of these bills that are being passed right now.
I think that's a valid concern. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, I tell every time I testify or I talk to one of these legislators, I'm like, it's not going far enough. You need to make sure that it's not targeting specifically to gender dysphoria, but they end up going and passing it, and we'll see what happens in the courts. And thank God we have the court we have, but they've generally been pretty fair on these issues in terms of, going against the grain, even against Republicans, and saying this law is too vague. Like that was what was interesting. The Arkansas law actually just got blocked last month, which was the first bill that banned any gender transitions in minors. It got blocked, because one of the issues it got blocked for was because it was a First Amendment violation, because it told doctors that they could not recommend other doctors to prescribe those procedures. And so that would be like you telling, you going out and being like, hey, you can go get that over there. And it's like, you wouldn't even be able to be a doctor. And, if you can't, give like referrals to other doctors. And so that was a First Amendment violation.
Yeah, a lot of these bills are sloppy, and that's a problem.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
A lot of these bills are sloppy.